Hey everybody, Rockin' Robbie here. Time for another Super-Mythology. Today we're going to talk about one of my personal absolute favorite comic books, The Fantastic Four. Alright, Fantastic Four was absolutely like the first true Marvel comic of the Marvel Age from 1961, created by Jack Kirby and Stan Lee. Now, Marvel had existed before in one form or another, but this was truly the launch of the brand Marvel Comics. It's very important before we get into this discussion to understand the importance of the Fantastic Four comic book, okay? Marvel at the time was a struggling company, and DC was the giant powerhouse, and the number one book of the time was the Justice League. Stan Lee was set about the task to come up with a book that could compete against the Justice League, another superhero team book. So, him and Jack Kirby devised the Fantastic Four. But what really set the Fantastic Four apart was not that they were just another superhero team, but that they were a family, and a dysfunctional family at that. They didn't always get along. In fact, at times they argued and fought more with each other than they did the villains. The villains didn't always, get caught and sent to jail at the very end. The Fantastic Four were not crime fighters, they were adventurers. And it was different, and it harkened back to a more classic time in comics, but it also looked forward to the trailblazing path of the superhero ahead of us. But they didn't like each other. The Thing fought with Johnny all the time. He fought with Reed often. Sue was always trying to control her temper around Johnny and control the others. And it was just such a crazy mix of personalities, just like the real world. Another real-world aspect of this is there were no secret identities. From the get-go, they knew that Reed Richards was Mr. Fantastic, Susan Storm was the Invisible Woman, Johnny Storm was the Human Torch, and Benjamin J. Grimm was the ever-loving Blue-Eyed Thing. Now, how can we take the example of the Fantastic Four and imprint that into our lives? Let's take a look at the classical four elements of Greek philosophy, for instance, okay? We have earth, water, air, and fire. Earth is your material energy, your actual material plane, your kingdom, your physicality, your wealth, everything material in your life, everything concrete and physical, that is your earth, your grounding in reality. That's your earth element, right? Water is your emotional energy, that more abstract water flow of emotion. Air, very simple, your mind, your thoughts, and your intelligence. And fire represents your drive, your passion, that way of action in your life, your will, if you will. Now, the Fantastic Four correspond to these four elements. Now, these four elements came up with in ancient philosophy to describe the four basic constituents of matter, which, of course, we know these are false in and of as that goes, but they also came to have a more collective unconscious meaning to humanity as a whole because of the personality traits. The material plane, the emotional plane, the plane of thought, and the plane of action. The Fantastic Four correspond to the elements in those ways, through their powers and through their personalities. Two of them are very obvious, two of them are maybe a little bit more tricky. The very obvious one is the Human Torch. He's fire, he's impulsive, he's energetic, he gets out and he goes for it, and he just burns ahead a blazing trail of action and passion. The Thing is made of rock, earthy rock. The Thing is solid, he's grounded, he's unmovable even. He is earth to a T. Alright, emotional, that's Mr. Fantastic. Look at him stretching, right? He expands and contracts, and he stretches out and flows like water. Complete mastery of his mind, right? He is able to focus in on the task at hand because all of his emotions, he is an emotional being. If you read the Fantastic Four, he's a father, he's a husband, he's a best friend and an uncle. He's not an uncle, but anyway, he's all of those things and more, and he's a decisive leader, right? So yes, he's very smart and intelligent, but it's through his control of his emotions. That leads air to Susan Storm, the Invisible Woman. She projects invisible energy that moves and is unseen. It's energy that is unseen, just like wind, just like the air. She has absolute control of her thoughts, because in order to turn invisible, to project invisibility, and to make these constructs of invisible energy, which she does just like a Green Lantern, requires much thought, much discipline of thought. So that's a really easy way to look at the Fantastic Four and how they correspond through the elements to personality traits in humanity. But let's look at the flip side of things. When our elements get unbalanced in our lives, we can learn that through the Fantastic Four as well. Let's take a look at these inverted and unbalanced elements. The Thing has a tendency to be stubborn and hard-headed, even to his own disadvantage. That is unmovable earth, when you are just so stuck in your own ways that you are unwilling to flow with change. Reed Richards, or Mr. Fantastic, displays our inverted sense of water, or our emotional state, when he is unfeeling emotion. Sometimes he is so into his experiments, so into his own head, and uncontrollably into his own head, that his emotions just get shut down and he becomes unfeeling. There is a lot to be said about balance and bringing your emotions into balance, but if you do that at the expense of actually shutting down your emotions, that is completely unbalanced. Susan Storm, the unquiet mind. It comes about a lot in the comics. If she can't focus and control her mind because of an emotional state, or because of impulsiveness, or because of stubbornness, any one of these negative traits from another element, she is the unquiet mind, and you can't accomplish what you will if you have an unquiet mind. The Human Torch displays this with unsound impulsiveness. When, yes, it's nice to be all get up and go, but if you have no thought or emotion or just stability behind your action, you're just going to be impulsive and you're going to cause more problems than you're actually going to resolve. That is evident a lot in the Fantastic Four story of the Human Torch. I think if you read the Fantastic Four from the beginning all the way through to today, which I have many times in my life because it is my favorite comic book, you see the story very early on. They're all unbalanced in their emotions, right? But then if you read it today, they're very solid, if you will. They are all completely there and perfected versions of their attributes, of these archetypes that they're trying to display to us. The Fantastic Four have achieved this balance through their own unity. They don't fight near as much as they used to in the beginning. Yeah, it's still there. Family fusses and fights with each other. But once you really come together with your family, be it blood or choice or just whoever's around in your life, when you take those people's example, when you bring them in and you bring balance with your family and learn from them and allow them to learn from you, you share a balance amongst each other. And the Fantastic Four are four separate pieces of one team. Just like those four elements are four separate pieces of our personalities. And one way we can look at the Fantastic Four a little bit deeper and enrich our lives. Catch you next time.